Hello, friend. Whether you're joining us live or watching this later on the internet, you have tuned in to the next episode of the Sharing Music series. My name is Jonathan Pape, and I am part of the Dedham School of Music. And on behalf of all of us, thank you for being here. Over the course of the next 30 minutes and all the episodes that follow, we're going to introduce you to people who have chosen to make music a part of their lives. Some of the folks who are involved may live down the street from you, while others you may be introduced to for the first time. Each month, we are inviting guests to talk about their favorite instrument and the styles of music they play and the music they listen to over and over again. We hope that when each of our episodes is over, you'll think a little differently about a style of music that never interested you before, listen to a new playlist a little bit longer, and maybe, just maybe, you'll pick up that instrument you've always wondered about. So in about 15 minutes, we're going to introduce you to a fine fella who's going to talk about the bass guitar. But we're going to kick off this episode with a look at songwriting. And to help us do that is our first guest, Bridget Nault. Hello, Bridget.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. It's nice to meet you. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. All right, you tell me, should I dive right in?
I think you should dive right in. Yep.
Okay, great. So I'm so thrilled to have been asked to be a part of this series and talk about my passion for music. And I come to you as I call myself a songwriter. I did major in songwriting at Berkeley and have always loved writing songs. And I wanted to just kind of talk a little bit about songwriting today with you because I think of it as really a craft. And so, anybody can write a song. And I totally believe that that's true. You can hum a tune and write down some lyrics. But, for people like myself that really work at it, there are techniques and tips that you can use to improve your writing. And so I just want to look at some different examples, and I'm going to sort of focus on melody and lyrics tonight. So obviously the components of a song when we're talking about songs is usually something that's sung and has a melodic, sung to a melody, lyrics to a melody with the harmony of the chords underneath it. And for the purposes of this, we could, talk all day about all these different elements, but I wanted to focus a lot on starting with melody because when you hear that song on the radio that you can't stop singing, or, you hear it for the first time and it's that earworm that just, it's in there and it's not going anywhere and you could hum the tune after hearing it once, that's a great melody. So how do people write great melodies, right? And with musical training, you can come up with different strategies and try different things. But something that I have done before and absolutely love doing is the idea of writing a song, at least a verse and a chorus, over one chord. So if you just play just your C major, sure, and maybe add a rhythmic component to it or something, but even just playing out that, if you're going to try to write a melody over that, you have to write an interesting melody because the chords are not giving you anything other than this sort of bass to go from. And so I've written a number of songs this way, and you can always go back and retrofit in other chords. So you can, add more to it. But what this will do is, if you're new to writing melodies or you're just trying to write something that's a little bit more interesting, you're going to find that you have to move when you have one center of gravity. So a song that I wanted to use as an example of a song that's not one chord, but really two chords primarily is a Beatles song called Eleanor Rigby. I'm sure some people have heard of it. And this song, I have loved this song since I was a child. This song really, I'm sure people are probably familiar with it. But this does a lot of the things that I want to talk about tonight, both lyrically and melodically. So what I'm going to do is just play you a little piece of this song and talk a little bit about the elements of it that I think are just so great. So yeah, here goes. And it's primarily over E minor. There's some variations of the E minor and an occasional guest star of the C chord, but it really is a melody over primarily one chord, which is why I picked this song. Eleanor Rigby picks up the rice at the church where her wedding has been. Lives in a dream, waits by the window, wearing a face that she keeps in a jar by the door. Who is it for? All the lonely people. Where do they all come from? All the lonely people. Where do they all belong? So I'm gonna stop it right there, because you can listen to the Beatles do it, and I swear you're gonna like it more. But I want to talk first about the melody, because again, that's got that E minor underneath, and do 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 do. I mean, you can almost see the arc of this melody. This is the movement of it, where they're working on this lovely descending, and anybody that plays music knows music is patterns, and there's repeated motifs and things like that, and they just do it so beautifully in this song. And it kind of reminds me of like just another song, and I will go back to talking about this. But the song "Somewhere Over the Rainbow" also has that, another very catchy melody, that "Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high." They're like getting you up there, and then they're gonna kind of like work the way down. And again, this is an E minor over an E minor chord, and they're able to create this beautiful movement. So another thing that I love about this song, and this will kind of take us into the more lyric, aspect of how I like to look at and think about songwriting, is that they show you in the verses what they tell you in the chorus. So a way to make a song more interesting, and not, hey, this is my one idea, and I'm gonna tell you all about it in the verse, and then I'm going to tell you again in the chorus, and then I'm going to have another verse where I'm going to tell you again what this is. They show you this woman. They show you, I didn't sing the other verse about Father Mackenzie, but you can see her in the church picking up the rice, and sitting by the door, by the window, wearing a face that she keeps in a jar by the door. I mean, all dressed up, all made up, nowhere to go. You can see this woman. Even hearing the song for the first time as a little kid, it's she's in the church that I know from when I was growing up. They're giving you these wonderful images of these people, and then they're going to tell you all the lonely people. Where do they come from? All the lonely people, where do they belong? So showing you in the chorus and then telling you in the verse. So a lot of musicians I know, and I think of myself as a musician before lyricist. So the lyrics always sort of came secondary. How do you write in a way that you can show? And a simple exercise that I like to do, that I got from a great professor at Berkeley named Pat Pattison, who has written a number of books about lyrics, that if you're interested in writing better lyrics, I really recommend his book, Writing Better Lyrics. But an exercise is called object writing. And this is something that you would do. You'd set a timer for 10 minutes and just free write about an object. So it can literally be anything. But the idea is that you're writing in a sense-based way. So you're writing, trying to be as in touch with your senses as possible. So taking like just literally any, like this metal mug that I have here, and just writing about it, but not in a literal way. It's cold, and it smells of yesterday's coffee, and how tired I feel. Something, things that are going to start to, you'll go in this way, and you won't talk about one thing for 10 minutes. You can just write. And what this will do, it'll take you somewhere else. But what it'll do, it'll get you to start seeing the world in this more descriptive way. So when you're writing lyrics, you might be able to better show, that this woman is lonely without saying in every line, she's so lonely. You know, what does she do when she's lonely? Where is she? So that's just a couple of little things that I think might be helpful for people that like songwriting and like to write songs. Or if you're trying for the first time, you know, the exercise over one chord is you can write a beautiful song over one chord. It's really true. But I wanted to also take time to play one of my own songs that I have written recently, taking some of these things into account. So I started, this was very much a song that started with one chord. You will probably call me out because now there's many chords in it. But the chorus still sort of has that one B flat where I started. And, you know, just trying to show you and then tell you in the chorus what's actually going on. So give me a moment, have a sip of water, and I will play this for you. And this song is called "Please Forgive Me." At the table by the door, where the light streams in, I sit in my silence. Got a million things to do, my mind is turning, I tremble, it's piling on, and I cannot handle it. I am not at my best, but I'm trying. Please forgive me and keep coming round. In you fly electrified, you're a mile a minute, you're making my head spin. So I protect myself, and yes, my words become fire. They scorch and they burn, but I don't really mean it. I am not at my best, but I'm trying. Please forgive me and keep coming round. Whatever crazy thing I said, I was lying. Please forgive me and keep coming round. I've got a poison touch sometimes, but don't give up on me, baby. Things are gonna be alright. I am not at my best, but I'm trying. Please forgive me and keep coming round. Whatever crazy thing I said, I was lying. Please forgive me and keep coming round. Please forgive me. Please forgive me. All right, so that's what I wanted to share with you folks today. You know, please hit me up on Facebook, Bridget Nault Music, if you're interested in my music or you're interested in talking about songwriting or really kind of anything else. It's really been a pleasure. Thank you again to the Dedham School of Music for having me.
Bridget, that was awesome. Thank you for that. Thanks for giving us some things to think about. Thanks for playing some music and for sharing some stuff that obviously means a lot to you. That was great. Hey, before I let you go, what are you listening to now? Anything that's getting some high rotation in your stereo?
So these days I am learning, I do 3-hour gigs of covers.
Okay.
So these days I am really, so an example of a song that I'm learning right now is
Yeah.
Rio from Duran Duran.
I've heard of them. Yeah.
A very random kind of thing and not anything I had ever even listened to before we decided we were going to try it out. Recently learned a bunch of Irish tunes for, we played a little gig and needed to have some of that. So
That's awesome.
I'm all over the place.
You're all over the map. I dig it.
But it's a lot looking back, kind of more than forward at the moment.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I was always a big Seven and the Ragged Tiger fan myself for Duran Duran. That was a big one for me growing up. All right. Well, thank you very much. So we are going to turn our attention to our next guest, who is going to talk a little bit about the bass guitar. He is, as I mentioned before, he's a fine fella. And so without further ado, Mr. Erik Privert, take it away.
Hey, Johnny. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate you taking the time and let me talk a little bit about the bass. Big shout out to Bridget. That was awesome. So glad to hear some of your music and you sharing some of your ideas. I'm going to talk about the bass tonight. So I've got my acoustic bass here, my electric bass here. A little bit about the bass is we're not usually in the spotlight. So we like to kind of stay in the back, make everybody else sound good. And so I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach tonight and show you a video of some of my favorite bass players, a little bit about the bass, that type of thing. And at the end, hopefully we'll have a little bit of time to answer some questions. So I'm going to share a little video for you here. Just a second. Hi, my name is Erik Privert. I'm a Dedham resident, Dedham School of Music board member, and a longtime touring bassist and a music arranger. Welcome to the Sharing Music series. Before we get started, let me tell you that the bass occupies some of the lowest frequencies that the human ear can hear. The standard lowest note on a bass is around 40 Hz to be exact. I suggest using some headphones tonight to get that full 40 Hz experience. So what is the bass? The short answer, well, it's the best instrument in the world. But more specifically, the bass is like the foundation of all music. Think of it like the foundation of a house. In my opinion, the bass is what holds up, supports, and stabilizes the chords and melodies that sit on top of the bass. I'll show you how that happens later in this video. But first, some bass basics. The bass is a 4-stringed instrument that is part of the string family. Like the other string family members, they share a similar shape and are often made of wood. Most often, when you think of a string instrument, you think about how it's played with a bow. Check out this example from bassist Christian McBride playing a melody with a bow. Be sure to watch both of his hands. And now example of playing with your hands, playing the bass pizzicato. So this sound of the bass is what interests me. The natural acoustic sound of the metal strings vibrating basically against a box made of wood. Through friends in high school, I found the sound of jazz, where the bass was the driving force. The bass fit with my personality. Let me explain. The bass is never the lead instrument, well sometimes, but it's not like a shredding guitar solo or vocalist leading the crowd. The role of the bass is to attempt to make every other musician feel comfortable and supported. By connecting the harmony of the piano or guitar with the rhythm beat of the drums, the bass is the bridge through all of it. Check out this sample of one of my favorite bass players, Ron Carter. He played with everyone from Miles Davis to A Tribe Called Quest. Listen for the bounce in his notes. Also notice his hands. I learned something from Mr. Carter here about being as efficient as possible. The bass is a very physical instrument, but watch his arms and hands. With just a little bit of movement, he is able to make an enormous impact. Now, the acoustic bass has a long history in replacing the tuba in jazz, blues, and orchestra music, but also has a place in contemporary, roots, folk, and country music. This next example shows the melodic nature of the bass from a band called the Wood Brothers. Make note of the range of the notes the bass player plays. Also, notice that without a drum set, the bass fills the rhythm with clear and driving bass lines.
Although I'm lonely, I'll sweep up the place. I'll go in early and I'll come home late. And one thing I never forget is her face. And you keep me around. You keep me around. Although I'm sad, I know I'm getting away. You said and you wonder how long I'm gonna stay, while I show you the rainbow in all shades of gray. Well, you keep me around. You keep me around.
As times and technology changed, so did the bass. The earliest electric bass started as early as 1930, but the bass we recognize most today, the Fender bass, started mass production around the 1950s. It was revolutionary for music, as it had the same notes as an upright acoustic bass, but had a much shorter scale or size, with an increased volume. The bass still held its role as being the foundation of chords and rhythm, but now with the electric bass, its voice was much more pronounced. In this next example, listen to one of the best electric bass players, James Jamerson, set up a groove. This style defined the Motown record sound. He skips around the bass with melodic lines that fit right in with the vocal. Imagine this song without this bass line.
Everybody thinks we're wrong, they do. But who are they to judge us? Simply cause our hair is long. People, you know, we've got to find a way to bring some understanding here today. Picket lines, picket signs. People don't punish me with brutality. Talk to me, so you can see.
Next up is one of the most classic electric bass players of all time, Sir Paul McCartney, the legendary songwriter and bassist. In this next sample, Paul is showing how the bass can play in melody and also set the tone for a song. This bass line showed me the way to lift up a band while keeping a steady beat. Listen for how Paul switches from leading the band with the initial groove and then plays a simple quarter note beat when the vocals come in to really move things forward. Like James Jamerson, I love how Paul McCartney makes the band move with a simple. Now I'd like to jump to some of today's best bass players. The bass has constantly evolved with the world around us, from influences coming from technology, collaboration with other instruments, and more. One of the most creative voices on the bass today is Thundercat. He mixes jazz, soul, fusion, rock, and more in his songwriting. Not only an accomplished bass player, but Thundercat is an amazing vocalist. This next clip shows how the bass can be a lead instrument. His playing here takes center stage as he shreds on a tune from The Tonight Show with guests Michael McDonald and Kenny Loggins. Expect the unexpected with Thundercat. Finally, one of my other favorite bass players in the world. She plays both electric and acoustic bass equally well, and is an amazing vocalist and inspired songwriter. Next up is Esperanza Spalding. What amazes me here is her ability to be so natural on the bass. She's connected to the instrument. Each note supports the lyrics, the band, and her voice. Please do yourself a favor and check out the full breadth of her work. Her songwriting reaches from jazz to classical, funk, soul, and avant-garde rock. Here's a short clip of Esperanza Spalding.
Erik, that was awesome.
Cool. Hope you guys enjoyed it.
Thanks for putting that together. That was really, really cool. Did you, so one of my questions I want to ask you was, is there a moment that stands out where you will never forget where you were playing, where you had to pinch yourself and say, this is amazing, or is it all the moments? Is there anything that stands out in your mind?
Every time. It's just being on stage is a different feeling. It's just, you kind of go into this zone. Did you see the movie Soul? Yeah,
I did. Yeah.
With that scene where they kind of like have this zone where everybody kind of goes to, where you're not quite on Earth, but you're somewhere else.
Yep.
But that's just the feeling of being on stage. It's just you're either by yourself or you're with other people, but it's just a place that is like no other. And it could be, I've had gigs in, coffee shops, to backyards, to weddings, to I played at the Kennedy Center. I've played at festivals around the world. For me, they're all the same. It's just love of the music, being in front of other people, sharing the art. And so I'm looking forward to this summer when we can kind of get in front of music again, and have that feeling more regularly. It's definitely missed right now.
For sure, 100%. Last question, then we'll let you go and we'll wrap this thing up. What's the one record you would say to somebody who's picking up the bass and trying to figure out which lane, which sound they want to go after, might help them find their way, whether it's towards jazz or rock, or you tell me, is there like the Bible for bass playing that you think of?
My approach to teaching or learning bass has always been find something that you love. So if you're listening to the radio or something on TV, it could be in a commercial, but find that one thing, that really resonates with you, because that's going to really draw people in. I've taught lessons before where I say, you need to check this out. This is the stuff I love. Yeah. And people will enjoy that. But I always like to kind of have people discover music on their own, because that love is what's going to keep drawing them back and want them to learn more and more and more. So there's bass everywhere. That's the thing. So that's, to your question, I think the way to find it is just, you got to listen a little bit more for the bass. It's a little bit lower in the mix. It's a little bit in the background. But the beauty of playing the bass is there's always a bass player in a band 9 times out of 10. So for me, I was always able to work for that. And so obviously, most songs have some kind of bass. It's either like, an acoustic bass or electric bass, or it could be a keyboard bass. But I think if you're an aspiring bass player and you're interested in the bass, whatever really makes you feel good, makes you smile, makes you dance. I think that's the big part about the bass too. If you notice a lot of those songs,
Yep.
if they make you dance, that might be a good tune to kind of check out.
Yep.
And dig a little bit deeper. But yeah, there's so many great bass players. But if you have any questions, people can always reach out. I'll be happy to help.
Right on. Well, it's two great answers, man. I appreciate that. So thank you very much. We are about at the little past the top of the hour. So with that in mind, I want to say a big thanks to our guests for volunteering their time and effort to be here with us tonight. If you've enjoyed our program and are interested in taking a lesson or a class with the school, we have posted our contact information on our Facebook page and our website, dedhamschoolofmusic.org. It has all of our classes, and we cannot wait to meet you. If you're interested in supporting our school and the programming like this, we've done our best to make that as easy as possible. If you're watching this on Facebook, you should see there is a donate button on the top of the page. Thank you. We're grateful for your support. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you in about a month with a nice conversation about a different band. You may have heard of them. They're called Pink Floyd. But until then, I'm going to sign off from Facebook and say thank you for listening. Take care.